Greetings. I'm Dante McFadden. I serve as the Unit Diversity Officer for the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Buffalo, and I am also a board member on one of Buffalo's long-standing legacy arts institutions, Squeaky Wheel Film and Media Center. Recently, we had the privilege to screen Dark City Beneath the Beat at Squeaky Wheel. And I am now in conversation with the director, Tedra Wilson, aka TT the Artist. And so, Dark City Beneath the Beat is a Baltimore club musical experience in the form of a documentary that highlights what Baltimore club artists, DJs, dancers, and producers pioneering the sound while rising above social and economic turmoil. And before I begin the conversation with my guests, I'll tell you a little bit about Tedra Wilson. Professionally known as TT the Artist, she is a self taught, award winning film director, AI designer, two-time RIAA Platinum recording artist, and multidisciplinary creative work whose work fuses film, music, fashion, and culture into bold, emotional, resonant storytelling. Her practice centers BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, and women-led narratives amplifying voices historically excluded from mainstream media through visually striking, genre-defying work. Born in South Florida, Tedra relocated to Baltimore, Maryland at 18 to attend the Maryland Institute College of Art, where she earned a bachelor's degree in general fine arts. Without formal film school training, she forged an unconventional path working in nonprofit education, teaching media and arts, and transforming curiosity and self-instruction into a celebrated directing career rooted in community, experimentation, and cultural authorship. Tedra made her feature directorial debut with Dark City Beneath the Beat, a critically acclaimed musical documentary celebrating Baltimore club music and dance culture, as I mentioned earlier. Produced by Emmy nominated media mogul Issa Rae and Denise Davis, the film retains a 100% Rotten Tomatoes score and widespread praise from Variety, Deadline, Time Out, and IndieWire, and premiered on Netflix, accompanied by an original soundtrack executive produced by Tedra and released via radio, Def Jam Records. This film was heralded as a powerful love letter to Baltimore and its creative legacy. In 2025, Tedra expanded her impact with Denim, a bold hybrid docuseries pilot spotlighting LGBTQIA plus creatives across fashion, performance, and art. The project earned award, rather, the Special Jury Award for Independent TV Pilots at South by Southwest, Best Director, Unscripted at Series Fest, and a Vimeo staff pick, solidifying her reputation as one of the most forward-thinking voices in contemporary storytelling. That same year, Revolt named her one of the top directors to know in 2025. So I welcome Tedra Wilson. First and foremost, thank you for making Dark City Beneath the Beat, and congratulations on all the recent accolades you've received.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words.
Indeed, indeed. And so we'll begin by just talking about you, learning more about your journey as an artist, and what were the initial steps in your journey in becoming an artist?
Well, I always said that, it's just in my genetics. My father, he used to doodle and draw like really, really amazing. And, of course, how he was raised, art was not looked at as a career. So he became an electrician. My mother is also very, very creatively inclined. And I've been, touching paintbrushes ever since the age of like, I don't know, probably 5. Um, I just have always been a lover of the arts, but genetically I can draw. And it was in me because I have siblings, and out of my 4 siblings, 2 of us have the ability to draw and create and are artistically inclined. And then the other 2, they're just straight up don't have that. So I always say, I got that gene inside of me. And I've just always been a lover of the arts in all aspects, from music to fashion to painting to just anything creative. That's just always been my world.
Yeah, and just to fast forward from cultivating that love for the arts from your father to attending art school, the Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, in Baltimore. And how would you describe your experience there? And what was your initial impression of Baltimore coming from South Florida?
Wow. So I'll start with my initial impression of Baltimore. Um, it was definitely a culture shock because I all my life have just lived in South Florida. And I had never even visited Maryland before. We didn't have the luxury to visit the college campus and all of that. So I literally hopped on a plane for the first time ever when I moved to Baltimore. And I would say my mom only has been there like twice to drop me off freshman year and then just attend my graduation 4 years later. So um, it was different. I feel like in Florida things are a bit of a gas chamber, so you're not exposed to as much. But when you go outside, you learn that the world is so much bigger. And Baltimore kind of cracked the seal for me and just seeing the world, bigger than what it was. On campus, it was more of a bubble, but outside of that was just, a few blocks over to the left of North Avenue or to the right. You're in the community. And so that's really what laid the foundation for me being a community artist and working with the creatives in Baltimore City, working with the youth. And my experience at Micah, at the time, and I think in any art school there is a diversity issue
Yeah,
where you're usually the only person of color in a class setting of like 20 students.
yeah,
um Primarily mostly of them are like Asian or white, and so you have to find your voice in a room full of people that have probably some have never even interacted with a person of color.
right.
And so that was kind of when I dived into trying to create art that did represent, the places that I was coming from, the voices that I was speaking for, because even in the walls of art school, there is still this uh classism and these things that are set up in the real world. You're always going to be just like that minority in the room, right? So I didn't know, at that time that these things were going to inform the passion behind the work that I do and the community stories that I want to share through my filmmaking. But that really laid the foundation for it because I saw that there was a lack of representation even in art school.
hmm And that's quite something how make that distinction between the world of the university in and of itself, and then what's happening throughout Baltimore proper. And what I
Hmm.
find fascinating about Dark City Beneath the Beat is how it magnifies Baltimore beyond what you may have seen on The Wire or any other David Simon related programs. And
Hmm.
before we get into the film, just like for you to say a bit about your entry into filmmaking, because as I noted in the introduction, you were not formally trained as a filmmaker. This is something
Hmm.
that you taught yourself.
Yeah. When it comes to film directing, I always say it chose me because if you would have asked me years ago that I would have had a film, let alone a film that premiered on Netflix that was comes from a grassroots, self-funded DIY space, I would have been like, yeah, okay. And sprinkle on top that my producer was Issa Rae, one of the biggest,
Wow.
uh people right now in this business in general, not even just in the Black cinema space, I would have been like, yeah, okay. So that's really something that I cherish close to my heart because I just didn't know that I would be doing this work. I started out actually trying to pursue dance.
hmm
Was going on casting calls. I went on a casting call to be a Beyonce background dancer, and when I didn't get the call back, because I was very delusional. I'm in a room full of women who were like technically trained,
Yeah.
and I never had a day of training in my life, and I was that delusional early on in my life, thinking that I could go on tour with girls who've been, dancing for God knows how long.
Right.
And so after that, I hung up my dancing shoes and I started focusing more on my music. And that's when I really kind of expanded. Music walked me into directing. I started doing my own music videos. And then while I was in Baltimore, I started doing videos for local musicians there. And then I realized me doing club music, Baltimore club music, which is one of the number one sounds right now, and it's expanded into Jersey, into Philly, and also into the Billboard charts, top 100. Just about any big artist has rapped on a club beat. But I just wanted people to know that there was something beautiful coming out of Baltimore, which is this club music sound. And a lot of people didn't know that that was the origins of that sound done in that way.
Mm.
And that's what inspired me to walk into doing my first documentary, Dark City Beneath the Beat, which you guys showed. Because I wanted to show a positive side of Baltimore City. We were all familiar with The Wire, and The Wire is like iconic,
Right.
but I also wanted to add to that representation and show that Baltimore is a creative city. Baltimore has culture.
Mhm.
Baltimore has talent. You should hire artists that come out of Baltimore. Look at all this beautiful art they're creating. Look at these spaces. You should support Baltimore because it's not a lot of support there. And so that really is what has been just such a learning experience. And I love that we created a film that highlighted over 150 Baltimore creatives, created a soundtrack that was all Baltimore club music. And a lot of the people featured in the film have now gone off to get Emmys. They're now pursuing dance. Some are dance teachers. Some have traveled all around the world internationally, teaching in Russia and Switzerland and just all different parts of the world, teaching Baltimore club dance and culture. And I'm happy to say that I feel like I've been a part of that because often women don't get written into these histories. We're often left out. And, maybe someday later on, the people will understand the different roles and how you pioneer movements. Because I do really feel like that was something that I pioneered and it for the generation that I was, coming up in.
Yeah, your film has legs. And something I think is really important to note is, partnering with Issa Rae on this project. I'm
Hmm.
assuming this was around the time she was transitioning from, her web series, The Misadventures
Yes.
of the Awkward
Hmm.
Black Girl, to Insecure on HBO. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I could certainly see, what she recognized in you and what she recognized in the project.
Hmm. And it was, I always say it all went back to the music because
Mm.
Issa knew of me from my music first, and my work was getting licensed in all her, in all seasons of Insecure, and then other shows like P Valley, um, 20s by Lena Waithe, major films like Space Jam Legacy. Like, I've had the opportunity to have my music in so many different cinema spaces, and that's basically how that relationship built. I started to go to LA and meet with whoever I could meet with and say, hey, I've been working on this thing, And then I met with Prentice Penny and he was like, oh, you're directing? And I was like, yeah, here's my trailer. And then there was a shadow directing program going on for Insecure. And even though I had already had music on the show, like they didn't see me as a director yet. So they was like, wait, do you want to be participate in this shadow directing program? And that's where I met Denise Davis, who saw my film trailer, and then she was just like, Issa needs to see this. And I'll tell you one thing about Issa, she put 100% support behind me just coming out of Baltimore, fresh out of Baltimore, and helping me get to a higher place. And actually, the goals for this film was for it to always hit mainstream streamers, right? So that was an exciting time for the city, never done before. And, I'm just so happy that we were able to just bring this vision to reality.
Yeah. And so this conversation we're having now, there's that thread to, you wanting to go into choreography and then shift it to music and then
Hmm.
making that shift into film. And I think that beautifully segues us into Dark City Beneath the Beat
Hmm.
itself. And if you could talk about, what were the aspects you wanted to capture in
Hmm.
Baltimore's club scene, and how did you come to meet the people who became involved in that film?
Well, I just knew the energy that I experienced going to the nightclubs. As a college student, I worked a lot of jobs. One was a go-go dancer, so I would go dance at the club, and then I would go to the nightclub spot, the Paradox, which was like this hub for all the underground music scene. I mean, if everything from Baltimore club, hip hop to ballroom, Vogue dance, right? And I was just like, why don't more people see this? But it needed to be done in a way where it could be seen as art too, not just cameras. Like at the time, we had the blogs coming in like Vice and Noisy and MTV. Like these people would come in and they would document and do like a little quick take on it, you know. But that was as far as it would go. So I was like, no, we need something that can live as a historical documentation. And it was from my POV, you know. I'm not born and raised in Baltimore. I moved to Baltimore when I was 18. So I always say I was born in Florida, but I grew up in Baltimore because at 18, you're still a kid, you know what I mean? And I spent, you know, from like 18 to my 30s living in Baltimore City. And you know, I just with the film itself, I saw the culture and I was like, we need to document this and I need to take this as far as I can take it because there's just living and working in Baltimore, there's just not a lot of resources.
Yeah.
So that's really like um kind of where things started. And then I wanted to make sure that every the stories we were telling, like if this was my POV and you opened a window to Baltimore City and got to just experience it in like that one day, here's what you experience. You know, a little bit of whimsical, a little bit of reality, a little bit of rawness. So I wanted to make it feel more like a mixtape where like, you know, how a DJ can scratch and mix and you right here, then you went to the next place. So when I was thinking about the edit and all the sound design and all of that stuff, I was thinking about how would it feel like if it was just like a documentary, but made like a mixtape, a visual mixtape.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was my approach. And of course, I just was inspired by a lot of people, you know, that have done great things in the Black cinema space. And I just, you know, saw Dark City as my first film and my little thread added to the quilt of Black cinema.
And I definitely love the way you describe how, your film as a documentary mixtape. I think
Mhm.
that's what grabbed me so much about just the way it transitions and what you capture um, in the film. And it just made me think also, even though this is a documentary, there's some music video aesthetics, from like the
Yeah.
era of the 90s when you think of people like Hype Williams, Paul Hunter, and Zinga Stewart, just to name a few people. And, any other influences that come to mind, in which it's not so much you were trying to emulate them, but it's like their
Yeah.
influence fused through your lens and ultimately manifests in this film you made.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so right off the bat, I'd have to say Jenny Livingston's Paris is Burning
Mm,
and Dave LaChapelle Rise
yeah,
were
definitely.
the first two documentaries that I had seen that didn't feel like a documentary. It felt like I was watching a narrative film, you know. The colors, they felt timeless. And I wanted to make something that felt timeless. Like no matter what time period you put it on, it can still take you to a place, right? A little bit like how we watch dystopian films where you just kind of like warped into that world.
Right.
How I wanted to approach Dark City. And then of course, like when it came to like color palettes and just textures, I love Black cinema. Like I'm a steward of Black cinema. So um Spike Lee, of course. You got people like Robert Towson. I hope I'm saying his last name right.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, Ava. Like I just look at a lot of Black cinema, like the old school movies too. You know, like I love the Set It Offs and the Waiting to Excels and even Meteor Man's. Like my world is always like genre bending, and it's always been that way for me. Like I'm a super multi hyphenate, and all my life growing up, I heard, "Hey, you gotta focus on one thing," you know, and I just could never focus on one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't. It just wasn't, it didn't feel natural to me. What
Mhm.
felt natural to me was like taking all the things that I learned and mixing them up and just playing with it like Play-Doh. So those directors were in terms of just Dark City influence, definitely like a Spike Lee. He was really like my studying board.
Mhm.
Um, but in general, now as a director, I'm very much evolving, you know, of course, getting into the narrative and scripted spaces. So there's a lot of directors that I've looked at, like one of my favorite movies right now was Substance, the director Caroline Farga Farjit. Um, and then there's another film called Pielis. It's by another favorite director of mine named Eduardo Casanova. I love Jordan Peele's, Boots Riley. Like I feel like even Danny Glover and I feel like I'm coming from those worlds now
Yeah,
where I like love when there's like surrealism and there's like this mix of how you can create narrative, but it doesn't always have to be traditional. And that's what I like. I like to play around.
yeah, yeah. And your film emulates that beautifully. And I want to, conclude with a couple other questions regarding what you have going on now. I know you're in the IA space, and I just wanted to know, how that's been for you and how you came to, make AI your own.
Yeah, so I've been doing AI filmmaking and just AI art concepts now for a little over a year. Just early on, I saw where this potential was gonna go, like the potential of AI. And just coming from a more, the traditional background of having done physical films, I was like in a place where I was living in LA and, I just had parted ways with the previous management. I um got the LA thing felt stagnant. There was the writer strike,
Right.
post-pandemic vibes, and it just felt a little stagnant. And I didn't feel supported. Like I just after a while, you're back on your own, and you have to figure things out. And when you're independent filmmaker, like a lot of people like, you want agents, you want managers, because those are the people that's supposed to get you work and stuff. So like if if it was the choice of mine, I would still have representation. I would still have managers to help navigate this space so that I can stay in the creative zone. But the universe had other plans. And so, when things don't go exactly how you want them to go. You still have to figure out how to make things happen. Um, because at the end of the day, I thought about what got me here. And what got me here was believing in myself. And sometimes that can become a muted voice in your head when you're living in a space like Hollywood and there's this constant influx of like having to be validated or having to be greenlit or having to have these meetings, but you're showing up as a representative. You can't even show up as yourself, even though they're like, be yourself. But then when you show up as yourself, that could be a thing like, oh, is she too green? You know what I mean? Because I show up and I'm like, I have more hope, I have more ambition
Yeah.
than maybe a person that's been doing this for years and years and years and they've lost that because, for whatever reason, there's a system. And when you fall into that system is like sometimes you're waiting for years for somebody to just say, oh, this script is good, instead of taking your own script and moving forward regardless of what anybody says. Because I'm sure I always tell people there's terrible films out there. Like there are terrible, if you go on Amazon right now, if you go on Netflix, like there's like a 50%, like you're gonna play something and it's gonna be like, what did I just watch? But that person still pushed through and did what they needed to do. They finished the project and completed it. So that's the space that I'm in now. And shoot, I think I went around the question. What was the question again?
About AI in particular.
Oh yeah, so with AI, going back to that, I digress. AI to me is a way for me to continue to work and create concepts and show people what I see in my head where there's not always a reference, I can make it. When you don't have the budget to be out there physically shooting, this can be a tool to help you get that next meeting with a A24 or a Sony or whoever. This could be the thing that helps boost your social media presence, which then will make the agents start calling because they want to know who you are because you just went viral for an AI clip. And so I like to say, with everything, there's evolution. There's always a ethics that need to be questioned with everything. And I'll say this, even with traditional filmmaking, contracts are still not right. Contracts are still not right for a lot of people. A lot of people still not getting paid what they should be. Same thing with the music industry. And these are like real things, not AI. So there's always an ethics problem, I feel, whenever you get into the spaces that are not driven by community. They're driven by corporate giants and billionaires and tech bros and things like that. And I feel like we as the average people really don't have much control over that. But we just have to use the tools so that we can also get our little piece of the American pie. We still need to be able to survive and keep up. Don't get left behind. You know what I mean?
Indeed. And I'll conclude with a two-part question.
Hmm.
First part, Dark City Beneath the Beat is a film people need in their lives. If you could share the platforms where they can find it, and then also if there's anything that's on the way that people will see soon by Tedra Wilson, TT the artist, what's coming out and where can they find it?
So Dark City previously premiered on Netflix a few years ago. And after my Netflix contract ended, I went on the journey of self-distribution. So, it would be great to support, for everyone to support Dark City because this is for us, by us, self-funded. I am an independent filmmaker, and you can stream it now on Amazon, Apple TV, Tubi, Google Play, and YouTube movies. And also it's coming soon to Red Coral Universe, which is another streaming site. What else? What's next? Oh man, I am working on some scripts. Of course, I'm, in the field applying to grants, trying to get my next short done. I have AI films you can check out. One of my AI films is now award winning. It's called Mud. And I'm hoping to, even with my short film Soulmates, develop that into my first animated AI short film. I mean, animated AI feature film. So you can expect a lot. And also from the music side, I'm working on my new project and building my label. My label, Club Queen Records, which is a woman-focused independent record label, turns 8 this year. So just trying to think about how to celebrate and amplify 8 years of just, working and pushing women voices forward. Um, so yeah, there's a lot to stay tuned, honey. Y'all gotta just stay connected.
Sure, sure. Tedra Wilson, TT the artist, thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you for Dark City Beneath the Beat, and congratulations on everything you've earned and everything that's coming to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Indeed.